Seph, thanks for joining, man. So how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Schlueter?
Yes, it is. Schlueter, you
Did I
got
say
it.
that right? All right.
Yeah, it's one of those weird German names. Like even at my
Yeah.
own concerts, like when I'm headlining, I'll like still teach people how to say my last name because I'm like, people are still
Yeah.
gonna butcher it. And I'm good friends with Matt Maher, who's obviously been around this for a long time. People still mispronounce his name all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, people are just gonna pronounce it the way they want to, and that's okay.
So speaking of Matt, so you guys are both kind of connected to the Catholic Church movement, right?
We are, yeah. Born and raised Catholic, and we're like the proud. Not many
Yeah.
of us, but it's cool to kind of be working in that sphere as well, and just really trying to kind of pioneer worship and revival and what that whole looks like within the context of the Catholic Church, where there is history of it, but it's also something that isn't common. So there's a lot of
Right.
good conversations around it, and just trying to get the ball moving in different aspects.
The first time I heard about you was last summer. Our babysitter, they're a strong Catholic family, and she went last summer to some camp in Ohio. She was there, I think, for like a month, maybe longer. It could have been all summer. And were you doing music at a
Yeah.
camp there?
Yeah, so I work for a ministry there called Damascus. Damascus at this point does a lot, but the biggest thing we've done historically is summer camp. This is actually our 25th year of running summer camps, and so we have like full-time missionaries who come there for and like serve these kids throughout the whole summer. It's like 3 months usually, actually, that they'll
Wow.
come and they'll get trained and formed and equipped to do this thing, and then from like June into early August, they're running
Yeah.
these stuff for these kids, just all about giving them an encounter with Jesus, because so many of them are we serve predominantly Catholic youth, who
Yeah.
are coming from these churches and schools, and so many of them have learned a lot about the faith, learned a lot about Jesus, but have yet to really encounter him and have like a deep relationship with him. And so that's like our whole goal through these camps, is to do that. So I work there full time still. I'm on staff helping with the worship side of things. Not super
Okay.
connected to the summer as much anymore. I was actually a camper there, and then I did summer camps directly for probably five years or so. And then
Yeah.
now I kind of more just oversee the people who run it all.
Yeah. Damascus. I remember her coming home and talking about Damascus, and she was talking about your music and how much she
That's
loved everything that
crazy.
was happening there. So that's awesome, man. So you live in Ohio, right?
Yes, Columbus, Ohio.
And Columbus. All right. I went to school in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh,
And
cool.
I was on staff. There's a church there called the Vineyard, which it's a non-denominational church, but I was on staff there for a long time. Actually, I did music at the Vineyard in Columbus quite a
Yeah.
few times,
Wow. Let's
which is not
go.
far from you. But and then the other thing I'll say about Columbus is my favorite fast food, I guess you'd call it, is Piata,
Yeah.
the Italian street food place, which I
Oh,
think
yeah.
they're only in Columbus or like right around that area.
Really?
Like there's not a lot of
That's
them.
crazy. They're so
That
good.
place is insane.
It's delicious. You're like, oh my goodness, this is. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like Chipotle, but for Italian food. You go through like a line, and they load up your Italian bowl the
Yeah.
way you want it to be. It's carb
Yeah.
heaven, but it's
It's Chipotle for
delicious.
Italian. Yeah. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah,
So are you with Damascus Worship too?
yeah. I started that in 2020, right after I graduated. We had like a 2-year missionary formation program, and graduated, joined staff. And at that point, like worship was something that was happening at our camps throughout the summers and on our retreats throughout the year. And we were seeing the Lord really like bless it, and just people, it was the place where a lot of people were encountering Jesus in powerful ways, and when we hear
Yeah.
testimonies of people's encounter with the Lord, so often it was happening in the context of worship. And it was
Hmm.
kind of cool because like that wasn't something that as a ministry was ever really our focus, or something we thought we'd really super get into. A lot of what we did was, like we had a huge priority and focus for like talks, and then also like skits and dramas. Like we were very much like a
Yeah.
skits and dramas ministry. And so it's even funny, like the way our stage was built and all these different things, it was not conducive to worship. It was a lot more conducive to like skits and dramas and preaching. But we just saw like
Yeah.
the Lord be like really blessing this, and putting just what we felt like was his favor on it. And so our organization was kind of like, hey, we don't really know what this looks like, but we know that the Lord's blessing it and we want to get behind what he's blessing. So we want to offer you this job on staff as like worship coordinator. We don't really know what that even means.
Yeah.
But like, we're just going to try to follow this thing, follow the Lord. And so started Damascus Worship, which was really just like the worship branch of what we were doing. And so gave some intentionality behind it of like, hey, let's actually start writing more music and let's start putting out some of these things. And like, what if we did events outside of Damascus and like actually traveled to different places where there was interest? And that kind of just started that whole thing. And now we have a team of like 5 full-time people underneath me who are, this is our ministry. This is what we get to do. So still
Wow.
very much involved and a part of it and passionate about it because, there's not really something like it in the Catholic Church. I think
Yeah.
there's, obviously you have so many different, you have awesome worship collectives throughout you have Bethel, Elevation, Upper Room, all these different amazing people.
Yeah.
But nothing really like that for the Catholic Church. And so it's really cool to pioneer that and to see like, man, what does a worship collective in the Catholic Church look like? And how do we help really bring accessibility to this way of worshiping to Catholics all throughout the country? So it's something I
Yeah.
love and I'm grateful for and passionate about.
Are there many Catholic churches doing, music that's not hymns, more like not congregational, but more, contemporary band
Yeah.
music style?
I think it's growing. I think there's becoming a more familiarity with it, and excitement around it, because I think what's happening is a lot of these people, people are having encounters with Jesus outside of churches, at a retreat, an event, a conference, where this type of music helped facilitate that. And so I
Yeah.
think what's happening more and more is then they're going back to their churches and they're like, wait, can this happen here? you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so you're seeing churches kind of begin to respond to that with various degrees of openness.
Yeah.
Some churches
Yeah.
are very closed off and don't want anything to do with it. And, are like, no, we'll never do that. It's wrong. And then you
Hmm.
have, some that are like, hey, let's try it out and see what happens. And then you have some that are like full blown, like, hey, all in. We love this.
Yeah.
This is like, we're passionate about this. So I think it's becoming increasingly familiar as this type of music is beginning to continue to grow and expand. And it's unavoidable to hear it, and
Yeah.
again, when they're going to these conferences or these whatever things, like worship's a huge part of Encounter there. And so I
Yeah.
think that is something that they're like, how do we incorporate this into our regular life? So it's not just something that happens on a conference. We have this awesome
Yeah.
encounter with God and worship, but it's a regular part of our rhythm of life.
This is something I really want to understand because I grew up in non-denominational churches. My dad was a pastor. And,
Yeah.
we were just like, it was a vineyard church. And so we always had a band. We were always doing like contemporary worship music, and I don't know much about the Catholic Church at all. My wife grew up Catholic. My dad actually grew up Catholic, but I personally haven't spent a lot of time in the Catholic Church. And when I think about Catholic Church, I always think about, just like hymns and more liturgy and definitely
Mhm.
not a band. I'm not thinking like Christian, like band at all, ever when I think Catholic. So first of all, I'm just curious, like what type of Catholic church did you grow up in? Did you guys have a band or was it more hymns?
The church I grew up in was actually a pretty normal Catholic church in the sense of,
Yeah.
you have your hymn, you open it up to it, very liturgical, very kind of go through the rubrics, start to finish. I think really where it came from for me was my dad. My dad was very like evangelical, had a huge value for praise and worship, had a huge value for these non-denominational churches that he just saw were on fire, and he saw that
Yeah.
was not always there in the Catholic Church. And so he would like, it was so cool as a family because we grew up, I feel like with both worlds connecting,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
we'd pray these like liturgical prayers or these like these rubric type prayers as a family, but then also my dad's leading it. My dad played guitar and played piano, and so he would lead worship as a family for us, and he would like talk about having a personal relationship with Jesus. And so I think that's kind of really where it came from. And then I mean, for me, then I never really witnessed that in our church, but I remember my dad worked in ministry in the context of the Catholic Church, and so he would put on these worship events and these like monthly worship
Interesting.
events, and I remember there I would have like I remember feeling the closest to God I ever felt in those moments,
Yeah.
where congregationally we were lifting up the Lord together, we were praising Him, we were singing these songs, because there's something about singing songs that God likes. I didn't
Yeah.
design the rules. I didn't plan it that way, right? Like, but that's something you look in Scripture, and David talks about it all the time, about singing songs, how He's enthroned on our praises, how our praise is like sacrifice to Him. And even you get a glimpse in Revelation, right? Or these different scriptures, Daniel or Isaiah, where you see a glimpse of heaven. And what are they doing? They're singing. Like, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, God likes singing, and He shows up
Hmm.
in that way. And so I remember just these events that
Yeah.
my dad would help put on, and congregationally we're lifting them up. And it was the first time I really experienced that. And it marked me. Like, it definitely was something that was like, man, this is special, and I feel the Lord here. And so growing up in that capacity was really neat. And I'm really grateful for it.
I was talking to our babysitter's parents, and they were talking about how they go to a conference in Michigan. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but they were like, they
Encounter.
kind of encounter. That's what it is. And they were said, we're charismatic Catholics. And that was the
Yeah.
first time I'd ever heard like those terms together. Cause I grew up in a charismatic church, but I never like
Yeah.
thought that would be, like where a Catholic is like really open to like the gifts of the Holy Spirit or like, and I don't know how many Catholic churches that actually represents, but I mean, it's just interesting to me.
Actually, a surprising amount. It's the way the Catholic Church is structured. There's dioceses, is what they're called, and so it's basically the collection of churches in the area underneath a bishop is the diocese. And most dioceses in the country have actually some sort of person working in the diocese, whether it's their full-time job or a part of an umbrella of jobs they have, to responsible for Catholic charismatic communities within the diocese,
Yeah.
because it's something that's, again, increasingly begun to grow. All of our previous popes have talked about it, and then and talked about the benefit of it, and just like these charismatic communities. And so
Yeah.
it's definitely something that is again, present and growing. And I think
Yeah.
that you kind of have these charismatic people, and then you kind of have it juxtaposed with the traditional Latin massers who have a
Hmm.
hard line on all these different things. And so really, as a Catholic, it's more like, hey, like, what does it mean to be Catholic? Like, it means we are open to the Spirit. It means we're open to the Lord working in
Yeah.
these ways, and we can't be closed off that. And it also means, like, hey, we believe in some, like, this liturgy and these rules and these rubrics, and together,
Yeah.
there's a great balance. I think a way I've heard it described, which has been really helpful for me contextualizing it, is like a river. Like, in order for a river to operate well, it needs the banks and the water. And so often you have, these churches, and I think this is most people's experience with Catholicism. It's
Yeah.
just the banks, but there's no water in it. And that's useless. It's like, man, you
Yeah.
got great guidelines, but there's nothing
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then other places you see where there's no banks, it's just water, and that actually doesn't go anywhere. It just,
Hmm.
yeah, you have water and it can have life in there, but it's not actually moving in any direction. And so I think
Hmm.
the middle is that great place where you have, hey, there's guide here, there's banks to keep this thing directional, but you actually do have the life of the Spirit, which is like that water that helps it run.
Yeah. You need the river. If you don't have the banks, it turns into a flood, which isn't good.
Right.
It also,
Yeah,
but that brings
exactly.
destruction instead of
Right.
life. So what do you think is stopping Catholic churches from embracing like more contemporary music?
I think the biggest thing, we have this conversation all the time because we get pushback. We get, people who are disgruntled about it. I think pride is the biggest thing. I think there's a level of pride within a lot of Catholic churches or leaders, that says, if non-Catholics are doing it, we can't do it. It's
Hmm.
like, man, that's Protestant. That's not us. That's whatever. We need to stick to this traditional liturgy, yada, yada, yada thing. And so I think very oftentimes it's that. And I think like being misinformed. I think you have some
Yeah.
people who are just who don't share that, like, hey, no, this is actually an entirely appropriate way to do this thing. And again, our popes have done it. Like, you look at these massive gatherings called World Youth Day that the church does, where you have millions of pilgrims from all over the world come. And this is the kind of
Right.
music that they do a lot, And
Yeah.
so it's clearly something that is very much a part of our church. But I think there are some people I think one of the biggest reasons churches don't embrace it is a pride factor of, man, that if they're doing this, we can't do this, and
Yeah.
we have to stick to we know everything, and this is the
Yeah.
way to do it. And then I think because I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with it, and so I think if a priest or whoever hasn't grown up in that context, they might be uncomfortable with it, and by welcoming it, it would actually force them to change a little bit. And I think there's a little bit also of pride that makes them not want to have to change, because all of a sudden, if you have to, if you welcome that in, then you have to help model it. And I think some priests are really uncomfortable with the idea of singing a song about like that might evoke emotions, or lifting their hands, or whatever it might be. And I think that definitely can contribute to their hesitancy or even opposition to introducing this type of music to churches.
Let me throw this at you. So I live in a town, and we're in Illinois, and there is a non-denominational church, which is very typical of like what I would go to. And I actually went there this past Sunday, and there were like 70 people there, and they had a band up front and everything like that, and it just felt, but it still like felt very like just dead. I don't know why. That just the feeling in the room just like was like not alive. Well, then there's a Catholic church down the street that's been there forever. They've been there a long, long time in this town, and the place is packed, like bursting at the seams. And I think we also are in a town where there's just a lot of like, Catholics who've grown up Catholic, and their parents were Catholic, and their parents were Catholic. So there's a lot of history there, but they're all at this Catholic church, and it's just packed. Right now, that Catholic church is like, I don't think they're not doing contemporary, modern music. Like they're doing like hymns and liturgy. But people want that, or they're going there for that. They're not going to this non-denominational church down the street.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, and just poke holes at me a little bit. I'm just curious, like, what is it that I did not grow up Catholic. I grew up going to non-denominational churches. What is it that I'm missing by not being Catholic? Like, try to convert me. Like, why? What is it? What is it that I might be missing?
I mean, I think what's interesting, in that example, is Catholicism, and I think there are pros and cons to this, but it's what we call an obligation to attend Mass on Sunday. So every practicing Catholic is obligated to show up on Sunday, whether they like it or not.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's like, it's in our church, it's considered a sin if you don't go to Mass and you had the ability to. And so I think there are pros and cons to that. I think there are ways that it's like, man, it's cool that you show up, and it doesn't matter if you like it doesn't matter if you feel it. You show up. I think at the same time, if you're at that Mass, and I travel all the time, and I make it to Mass when I'm on the road, and make it work with my schedule. And then so I see a lot of different churches. And so you can see a church. I see a lot of churches that are really, really empty. I see some churches that are semi-full. But I think what I rarely do see is a lot of life and vibrancy. And I think, again, sometimes that's what obligation can cause, is like, man, I'm just showing up. I'm doing this because I have to, and I'm going to get in, check it off, and leave. And so I think that's not helping convert you probably, but it is that reality of like, there's an obligation. I think there's pros and cons there. I think what is helpful, and why I think there's actually been, you're starting to see people come back to the Catholic Church in some different places, and you're seeing even like I just saw something the other day about the guy who plays David in that Amazon TV show House of David. He just came to the Catholic Church, and obviously Jonathan Rumi's a Catholic, and you have these different people. And I think what you see is pendulum swings a little bit. And so I feel like we live in a world that is so chaotic and has gone so much to the pendulum side of like anything goes, and however you feel, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel, there's just there's chaos. And I
Yeah.
think where people are is they really are actually looking for structure and order and stability and even history, I think, like something that's like stood
Yeah.
the test of time. And I do think that that is something the Catholic Church provides. It provides, like a way of life. It provides a structure. It provides, order. And it provides
Yeah.
obviously a very long history with a lot of writings and examples and models and thought out theological things that I think
Hmm.
people can go to and say like, man, like there's order here, and in a world that's so chaotic and is so like do whatever you feel like,
Yeah.
this is kind of the opposite side. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why people are swinging in that direction. And I think it's cool. I think it's awesome that
Yeah.
there's a return to that. And at the same time, we can't forget the life again, the water in the
Yeah.
midst of that we can't forget the life of the Spirit that really enables all that to not just show up and check it off and live a moral life, but hey,
Yeah.
how many of us are really encountering Jesus and then living him out beyond just that Sunday at
Yeah.
Mass? Like, how is my life different?
I like that obligation piece too, because it's like, hey, are you in or are you out? Like, are you get committed to this or you're not? It's not like,
Right,
oh yeah, I'm going to like a soccer game this morning. I'm going to play golf this morning. It's like, okay, wait, are you going to really
right.
make like God a priority in your life or not? Like, I actually, and I do think people are craving that. Like, we've created, like you said, we've created so many gray areas that like it's exhausting. It's like, well, then,
Yeah,
okay, well, what is the truth? Like, what do we believe? And are we going to do what we say we
right,
believe? And so I
right.
do think you're right that people are wanting black and white. I was thinking like, okay, you've got this Catholic church down the street from my house that's like packed. I mean, there are people there obviously saying like they're making that a priority because they're not golfing. They
Yeah,
chose to be there on a
right.
beautiful Sunday morning and they're there. But, and I'm just going to say this, like to me, the service then just feels though like, I just feel like it's a missed opportunity in some ways sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got this many people here. You could be like designing a service that could really like impact people and pull like people into like, okay, how are you going to like really change the way you're living? Where it's not just like doing
Yeah.
the going through the motions and going through the service. What would happen if a Catholic church did have like music that was totally captivating like the younger generation? Or I don't know. I just wonder if there's like a
Dude,
missed opportunity there.
dude, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly my thought. And that's why, Damascus exists. And we're seeing it because, we're running these camps, and we have mass every day at camp. So we have mass at some point in the afternoon, and then we still have like our nightly time where we have worship, and then a message, and then more worship, and we pray for them, whatever. So you have both, and in that context of mass, we are playing modern music, and we'll throw hymns in there too, but we're doing it with a band, we're doing it on a
Yeah.
guitar or with drums and whatever, and the kids are like so engaged. I mean, you're having these sixth graders that are lifting their hands up and singing their
Yeah.
heart out. You have these high school boys who usually are so closed off, like crying, worshiping the Lord. And it is, and then again, young adults. We have young, like we have like 300 something plus young adults who are there throughout the whole summer on mission, as the counselors and staff members and whatever. And they're encountering God in powerful ways. And then
Yeah.
and it's so tragic because then they're going back to their parishes, their churches, their
Right.
universities, and they're like, is there a place for this? And sometimes they're being told that's not even Catholic. And it's like, oh, such a missed opportunity, because it's like, one, it is Catholic, and two, meanwhile, like you're missing an opportunity to really provide life, because
Oh
reality
yeah.
is, even these hymns like that they're reading, you go through these books, and it's funny because I think a common critique amongst Catholics of this type of music is, man, it's all emotional, it's all about me, it's all about yada yada yada. And I'm like, go look at the CCLI top 100. These are the top 100 songs being used in churches across the country, and almost all of them are so vertical and so about the Lord. But the ironic thing is, then I open these hymnal books that we're using, and
Yeah.
most of them are about me, and I'm
Yeah.
singing to people around me instead of the Lord. And so
Yeah.
that's my thing with worship on any Sunday. I'm like, honestly, I don't super care whatever style you want to do. I mean, obviously I have preference here, but at least make it vertical.
Yeah.
And
Right.
here's the reality: is you have these beautiful songs that are being written, yeah, they're modern or whatever, but
Yeah.
why do we discount that? At some point, these songs were modern, and like they're about Jesus, and they
Yeah.
actually elevate your heart towards Jesus. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, the biggest thing that these kids, these young adults are craving is worship of Jesus. But
Yeah.
instead, they're singing, they're reading a book that's like, gather us in the lost, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like not about anything relating to Jesus. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, like that to me is a huge missed opportunity to really bring people to an encounter with Jesus through our singing and our worship in that way.
We live in such a self-focused world. Like everything is me. I do think that those vertical songs, that those are what connect people to God, and those are what are actually like change hearts. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, Seph, do you think if I went up there and said, because I'm a worship leader, do you think if I said, hey, I want to like do like a worship night at your church, do you think they'd let me do it?
Totally depends on the pastor. Like that,
Yeah.
and that's the crazy thing too, is again, so much of it has become preferential. And so, like, for example, my wife and I, before we got married, we really wanted to have mass at our wedding mass at the church that she grew up going to. And we scheduled a meeting with the pastor to talk through it and see, like, hey, does this work? Whatever. And obviously we wanted
Yeah.
contemporary music as a part of it. We sit down and he goes, hey, before we go any further, I know you're from Damascus. I know you guys like this stuff. That's not going to be even an option here. So if you guys want to do that, you're going to have to go somewhere else. It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. And so we ended up going somewhere else where they're totally fine with it. And, they love it and encourage it and actually have a regular service. So I think the problem is, and I even kind of like asked him, I'm like, is this something, do you think is wrong? Do you, whatever? He's like, no, it just makes me
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And so I think that's a hard thing where it's like, man, you're letting your comfort with something get in the way of other people's encounter with someone. And that's just so hard because a priest, you could be moved, transferred to a different church. Another priest could come
Right.
in and all of a sudden it's like, it's totally fine. That priest is fine with it. But then you're confusing
Right.
the faithful people of God because you're like, is this fine? Is it not fine? This pastor said it wasn't. This one said it is. And, it just adds confusion. And so I think it totally depends on the pastor. Some pastors might be like, man, we've been looking for this. And I would love for you to lead a worship night. And it'd be so sweet. And others would be like, no, can't happen. Plus you're not Catholic, so it can't happen. It's like, man, it's so unfortunate,
Do you find many Catholics are actually familiar with worship music? Like, would they know who Elevation Worship is or Bethel or
young adults in particular? Yes. I think young adults, again, this is the music they listen to. So many of them, like they love it and they are inspired by it and, and hungry for it. I think, and even more and more, like these moms are listening to K-Love or Air One or whatever it might be, and they're hearing it, and so they know about it too. And so I think there definitely is a general familiarity, at least with the songs, if not the artists themselves. So I think they're generally familiar, and again, I think are intrigued by it and excited about it.
Do you think there's many Catholic churches using tracks like Loop Community?
No,
Probably
not
not.
many.
Yeah. I know. We got to convert some. How do we get them? How do we get them doing that? Well, we got to get them playing your songs. That's what we got to do.
Well, and I think that's like, honestly, that's one of the cool things about, and one of the reasons I'm so grateful to be making music and to be able to, like do these things with Damascus worship, because there are churches that won't ever play worship. Again, this goes back to the pride thing, which is sad. But I mean, you got to work through it. It's like there are churches that will never play contemporary music, but they will play Matt Maher. It's like, how is this different than whatever? It's like, just because he's Catholic, it's like, okay, that's silly. But, how do we make that it's like, all right, that is the way it is. How do we make that inroad there? And so that's like really what we're trying to do is build inroads and make this more accessible and teach people how to do. Like we run a worship conference, Damascus does every year. And it's, it's again, trying to help normalize this within the context of the Catholic Church. And I think there are, again, more and more like ministries that are using tracks and doing things like that. I think it's typically happens. That's the thing is you have the Catholic Church and you have all these churches, but then you have all these ministries that kind of exist outside of a parish structure. And it's so funny trying to like explain, because people are like, oh, you work for a church? I'm like, kind of. It's like a ministry that helps churches, because it's different. It's something that's pretty uniquely Catholic, and it exists because a lot of our parishes aren't doing what a church is supposed to. And so people start these ministries then to help support churches. And so Encounter, like like earlier, they run a charismatic ministry school that and it's spreading like wildfire. It's all throughout, and it's basically just teaching people life in the Spirit. And they have campuses all throughout the country, and they're doing all these amazing things. And they have an annual conference that gets thousands and thousands of people to come to it, and you're getting bishops and you're getting priests, and so you're seeing this kind of progress. And like they'll use tracks, but it's kind of still working to get churches to really even learn how to, I mean, we would need a whole revamp of our sound systems first. We need our whole AV system completely remodeled and to even make anything.
I don't think there's AV. I don't think there's any monitors there.
For sure not.
Do many Catholic churches have a worship leader on staff? Like all these non-denominational evangelical churches have a worship leader, like staff position. Does a Catholic church have a worship leader? And does that term even make sense in a Catholic church?
Very few. The crazy thing, again, there's just so many different layers to this, because I think they usually have a music minister or head of musical liturgy or whatever it might be. And so they're kind of in charge of the music for the parish. But they very rarely have someone on staff dedicated to leading contemporary music. That's a pretty rare thing. And then even then it's so funny because there are some Catholics that typically are more in the traditional sphere that will say only Mass is worship, nothing else is worship. That's praise, but you can't use the word worship for it because only the Mass is worship. And it's like, that's just not true. So when you say worship leader, they'll get some of these more traditional people will get upset at that term because they're like, only the priest is the worship leader because he's the one leading the Mass. And you're like, guys, come on. Like you look through actually church documents and even our catechism, and it uses the word worship in a whole variety of ways that has to do with things outside of the Mass. So, but you just, there's I think there's probably very few churches that have a full-time worship leader that is called that and is responsible for, any sort of contemporary music. They just have like their music ministers that focus on training a choir, playing the organ, doing Sunday service, and that's pretty much it.
Do you think that's a miss? Do you think there should be?
Oh, absolutely. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with Damascus and like this conference and stuff is really like help normalize it and help equip it. Because again, it's like people are hungry for it. And now I'm not going to say every church needs this, because I think a church needs to obviously adapt to the needs of its people. And there are some people that really value and get a lot of life from a more traditional liturgy. And that's how they encounter God. And that's beautiful. And I'm like, if that works for you guys, great. But also, again, there's a lot of people that walk in and out of a Sunday service with zero real personal encounter with Jesus in their heart. And again, I think worship is a huge way for that to happen. And so I wish more churches were like, man, this is an investment, but it's worth happening. It's worth having because we believe in this and we believe people can encounter the Lord through it. And like, let's build some. I mean, that's what our ministry did at Damascus. They were like, we didn't really know how this is going to work. We've never had this position before. Don't really know what it's going to look like, but clearly the Lord is doing something here. And so let's try to make something happen. And so I wish more churches did. I think that's actually going to be the trend happening. My hope is that becomes more normalized as, again, this music becomes more normalized and accessible to Catholics around there. But I think churches are struggling just to pay anyone. I mean, to be honest, most Catholic churches in particular, are cutting youth ministry because kids aren't showing up. They're cutting, like all sorts of these things because they can't get success with it and they can't pay people. And so it's like, wait, to add a full-time guy who's going to do worship music, like, no, let me just get this guy who wears 7 different hats and happens to play the organ,
Totally, So you're making music, Counting My Blessings, released back in July. Tell us about that project. And then I'm also curious, how you felt like the reception has been for that in the Catholic Church and then also just in general.
Yeah, Counting My Blessings came out almost a little over 2 years ago, which is crazy. Well, the album just came out this past July. But the single came out 2 years ago, of 23. Album was crazy. It was so fun to finally put it out. As songwriters and artists, most people don't realize like the life cycle of a song. I think
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just like, oh, you just wrote the song, you recorded it, and you put it out. And it's like there's a lot
Yeah.
that goes into a lot of process. So I mean, like these songs were written anywhere between 5 years ago to a year ago, and you kind
Wow.
of have that whole range of songs. And so I think it was really special to kind of have it out because it kind of felt like, this, conglomeration of my journey with the Lord or my heart and prayer over the last 5 years since I started like coming to Nashville and writing. And
Yeah.
so it's really cool to like have that all out. And I mean, the reception's been so special just to see the way that the songs have impacted people.
Yeah.
To see, just the testimonies come in, and I mean, Catholics and
Yeah.
non-Catholics alike. That's why I'm passionate about not just trying to box it in to
Yeah.
Catholics or non-Catholics. It's like I just want to write music about Jesus because that's the person we all worship, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely cool to see. Again, sometimes Catholics are weird and whatever, and will only listen to Catholic music, and so it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that stinks. But hey, at least I can provide you for something that hopefully bridges the
Yeah.
gap then to these other amazing artists,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then obviously just to share it with the church as a whole, and see, you know, the way
Yeah.
that it's brought just encounter and unity and all the things
Yeah.
that I pray to happen.
It's awesome, man. Counting My Blessings is such a great song.
Thank you.
And we've also got all the tracks and the charts up at Loop Community and on Song Select at CCLI. So everybody who's
Let's
listening, go
go.
get them. Seph, we've got 15 minutes left, and we didn't even talk about the topic that I wanted to. But we did talk about a topic that I wanted to, but not the one that we planned on. Here's an idea I've got. So we got 15 minutes. We're going to
Yeah.
talk about just leading worship when you feel spiritually dry. And I'd be curious
Yeah.
to hear any of thoughts and tips you have on that. Like, how do you, when you got to get up there, it's like Sunday rolls around every 7 days. And, you may be feeling it, you may be not. Like, you might be in a season where you're just totally drained and feeling
Yeah.
dry. Like, well, I only have to do this just because it's my job. There was an Instagram post you posted recently that talked about, you were kind of giving tips for students who are going back to school. And I felt like these kind of actually align with like what to do when you're feeling spiritually dry. This first one that you posted said the enemy wants you isolated and the Lord
Yeah.
wants you integrated. Tell us about that one.
I think so often we don't engage in community in a real authentic way. And that is what the enemy loves. Whereas the Lord actually wants you integrated, and that means bringing your whole self into something. And so what's been vital for me is and one of the reasons I haven't moved to Nashville like everybody else has, and done that whole thing is like I'm connected here, I'm integrated here. And not to say I couldn't be there, but I have a community of people who know me and who I can go to keep me accountable, who I can just be honest with, who I can just share, hey, I'm really not feeling this. Would you pray for me? But so often the enemy wants us isolated, and he wants us to think that like nobody else experiences this and it's just you. And so if you bring it up, you're going to get in trouble, or you're going to get taken off, or you're going to get whatever it might be. Whereas actually, like when you're fully integrated, you're bringing your whole self, and that means flaws and all. And so I think one of the takeaway from that is like really get connected to community and be vulnerable, like be honest, vulnerable, and authentically you, because like there's nothing that's going to drain you more than having to put up a facade. That's just going to keep you exhausted and keep you dry. When you can be authentically yourself, sometimes like that's just the breakthrough you need, is just to be like, is to tell somebody, I'm dry right now. I'm struggling right now. I don't feel this right now. Because the enemy just wants to keep you that all internal. And when you can just have people that you can go externally and say it to is a huge factor.
Yeah. Worship leaders are so alone. It's crazy when I talk to, like, when I've tried to do, we try to do at Loop Community, we try to do a lot of like local events where we bring worship leaders together. And it's just interesting to me how like churches don't talk to each other. It's like we're all doing the same thing. And you literally could be like a church like down the road, like 5 minutes away from you, from a guy who's doing the exact same thing that you are. But you're not like talking, and you're not in community, and you're not, that's such a missed opportunity. You could be sharing like, hey, here's like the struggles we're facing, and like how are you dealing with that, and like just so you'd feel known. So that's what we're doing too with the Worship Innovators conference as well. All right, that's a great one. And I think that this one too, if you're isolated, it leads to being dry, where you feel just
Totally.
like going through the motions, burnt out, and alone. All right, this next one you posted was God's grace defines you far more than your grades ever will.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this obviously was oriented towards college students coming back to school, but I think it's in the same thing, like a performance mentality. Like God's grace defines you far more than your, set ever will. And so I think that's the thing. Like, it's so easy for us to, lose track, lose focus, and put everything put our worth or identity in how we did on any given Sunday. And I remember hearing someone say this, I don't even remember who it was, but years ago. And it's something we've adopted as a team of like praying together before every service, obviously, but after we leave stage and offering the set to the Lord and just saying, God, everything that just happened, it's yours. Would you get the glory from it? But we also just like let go of it too. Like we let go. It doesn't define us. And so I think like you're going to feel burnt out when you feel the pressure every time to perform. Obviously, excellence is a good thing. We want to be excellent. We want to be, we want to give the Lord the best of what we have, but don't let that define who you are, because otherwise you're just going to get burnt out. Let the grace of God, who says like, man, I'm just so grateful you showed up today because that was the best. That was the best of you. You showed up with the best of you, and I'm grateful for it. And even if it doesn't look like you wanted it to look, you still gave me your heart. And even the times we don't give him our heart, there have been times I've left stage and I've been like, man, my mind was so many different places. I didn't feel like I even thought about the Lord as I sang about him.
Yeah.
And like letting the Lord meet you in that place and just be like, hey, my grace is still bigger than that. And I still worked through that. And it isn't an excuse to keep doing it over and over again, but it is something to lean on, that like, hey, it's God's grace that's going to define this, not any action that I could do.
Man, that's such a good tip. And I also love that you bring up the post-set prayer. It made me think about when I was on staff at a church in Cincinnati, in Ohio. We did have a post, like, it's so funny because the prayer before service always like felt so rushed, because it was like, oh, there's like 10, there's a minute left on the countdown clock. Like, hey, Lord, like bless this set, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then like you do the set and then you like never even like follow up on it in a way. And we would always do a post-set prayer. So afterwards, right after we walk off stage, you go to the green room and we just pray and we just say, God, thank you for like what you did here. And we just offer it up to you. And all right, other slide you posted: communion, relationship with God; community, engagement with others; and calling, which mission to the world. Those are the keys to thriving.
This is what I'm super passionate about, because it's like, I really do think those are if we can nail down those three things, we're going to thrive as Christians. Again, it's communion, which is your relationship with the Lord. And we all need to make sure we have that. We need to make sure that God is staying our priority. The other one with prayer was like, hey, don't fit prayer into your day. Fit your day around prayer. Like that, you need to have that communion with the Lord to thrive. Because if you don't, it's so sad to me when I'll hear worship leaders talk about, how long it's been since they've really just sat down and prayed with the Lord. And it's like, man, this can't become our prayer. Like, obviously all of it's a prayer, but you need that time where you and the Lord can talk, and he can refine you and prune you and encourage you and challenge you and all the different things. Like, you need to abide with him. And so I think communion with the Lord, again, community with others, we already hit on that a lot. It's so integral to thriving. And then calling, like your mission to the world, like know what you're meant to do, and I think for worship leaders, like, exactly. Don't just treat this as, a hobby. Don't just treat this as something you kind of get up, you check it off the box and you do. But hey, are you really called to this? That means like this is a part of who you are. I love where David in the Psalm says like, awake my soul, awake lyre and harp. But that word, my soul, there's a number of translations for it, but it really is awake my glory, awake lyre and harp. And so David is actually saying, what is his glory? It's his lyre, it's his music. He's saying like, awake my glory, awake lyre and harp, let me praise the Lord. Like when we talk about giving God glory, it's like actually giving him the things that he's blessed you with. So if he's blessed you with worship, with singing, playing, or if he's blessed you with preaching or hospitality, or like anybody in any sphere can relate to this. It's like, that is your glory. And that when we say we give God glory, it's because we have glory. We can't give what we don't have. So that's your glory. And so that's the thing. Like, what is your mission? It probably has to do with your glory. It probably has to do with what you're good at. It has to do with that purpose. And so when we can focus on that call, again, communion, community, calling, like
Yeah.
when we integrate all three of those into our lives, all of a sudden we begin to thrive in a way that is really special and substantial.
And then we talked about it. Don't just fit prayer in to your day. And then also this other one, read your Bible. Read it even more when you're busy.
I mean, I think it's so often like when life gets busy, prayer is the first thing to go. Scripture is the 1st thing to go. And it's like, that should be the opposite. Like, I don't know who said it, but I remember hearing, I feel like a number of people probably, but like, if the devil can't get you to sin, he'll keep you busy. He'll get you busy instead. If devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. And I feel like that's so real, because when we're busy, then we lose that connection with the Lord. And then we can be doing all these things, but our heart is disconnected from him. So it actually doesn't bear the same fruit that it could if we were abiding with him. And so I think like anytime in my life where I'm really busy, I try to pray a little extra even. I try to like even the extra in the word, because I'm like, man, like I need this. Like especially in ministry, like we can't lead people where we haven't gone. And so if we're not regularly going to the fount, to the well, to the source, it's going to be really hard for us to lead people there. And so I think like it's that same thing. When you're busy, make sure that you're praying even extra, and carve out time to do it. If it means you need to get to bed a little earlier so you can wake up a little earlier so you have that time, then do that. If it means, man, I have to sacrifice this usual thing that I would do, like then do it, because he has to be the number one priority.
I love that. Another one you posted was, you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be progressing.
Yeah. I think again, this is that whole thing where like you're going to get burnt out if you feel like you have to do everything right all the time. That's going to be a really easy way to get burnt out. But what my focus is not perfection. It's like, how do I be a little more like Jesus today than I was yesterday? And if every day I just try to be a little more like him, and don't put the whole weight of it all on like right now. It's like, I think sometimes we go from 0 to 100. Like that's what happens every year on January 1st. New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do diet. I'm going to pray. I'm going to like, you add everything at once. You try to be perfect immediately, instead of just focusing on like, how can I get a little better and then a little better and a little better?
Totally.
And I feel like for me, that's been one of the most helpful, healthy things in my life, is just like, how do I regularly make progress towards being more like Jesus? Again, prayer is a huge way for that. Like the Lord is always helping me grow in prayer. Community, huge way for that. Like it's always like having people in my life are going to challenge me and encourage me and be examples. Being on mission is always going to help me grow, because it's like, oh man, I like tried to share the gospel, and I realized I don't even know it as well as I thought I did. So I need to grow here, you know, like, again,
totally.
I need to be continually progressing, but I don't need to put the pressure on myself to be perfect.
Man, those are all great. I love those tips. Man, we're totally out of time, but I appreciate you taking the time to hop on this call and talk about all sorts of things.
Dude, it's so fun. I love it. I love getting to talk about things that are just conversations like this are so fun, bring a lot of life. And I hope, bring our blessing to the people who listen. I hope that, people can walk away and learn things and have new perspective and all that jazz. So thanks for just facilitating conversation like this. I love it.
I think it's awesome what you're doing, man. So
keep
up the great work.
I really
love your music. Everybody who's listening to this, go get the tracks, charts for Seph's music at Loop Community and CCLI. All right, guys, great conversation with Seph Schlueter. Type down in the comments what you do when you're feeling spiritually dry, or maybe a song that you go to in one of those seasons. Hit the subscribe button. Stay tuned for future Worship Fuel shows.